Låt se här. Vad 17.
You must allow me to share screen.
I will do. Sorry about the delay. I will say. So. Well, most welcome to 1598 of the Heidegger series. We will today go one step further in Life, Death of Jacques Derrida. And we are now in the second session, Logic of the Living, She, the Living. And that will be in the English version, page 25. Second session. Logic of the living, she the living. And the purpose here is to parallel two texts, one by Köster, the other one by Derrida, to see if we can make deconstruction come alive, be a live thing. And please, I'm writing this chat, remind me about the webcam. Very important, we are dependent upon it. See if I can sort of get it in here. It's quite warm here in Sweden. Kalle Lundahl joining me from Barcelona. And well, we have many interesting viewpoints in the former session, and we will continue. And it was pre-noticed by Derrida, his second session already in the first. I would like to spare you the tedium, the waste of time, and the kind of servility there always is in constantly recalling prior sessions. In justifying one's trajectory, one's method, one's system, in providing more or less smooth transitions, in re-establishing continuity, etc. So many imperatives of traditional pedagogy with which it is impossible to break completely, but which would very quickly if one were intent on abiding by them rigorously, reduce one to silence, to tautology, or to endless repetition. I thus propose to you my compromise. And as we all know, in terms of what is called academic freedom, you can take it or leave it. Considering the time at my disposal, the tedium I also wish to spare myself, the freedom I am able to exercise and want to preserve. I will proceed in a way that some will deem aphoristic and unacceptable in the context of a course, but that others will accept as such, and that others still will find not aphoristic enough. Listening to me in such a way, with such ears, everything depends on the ear with which you heard me last time and hear me in general. That the coherence and continuity of my trajectory will have been quickly apparent to them. Right from the first session, right from the first words. From the very title of that first session. In any case, it is understood that whoever wishes not to follow along can do so, and that whoever wants and is able to say something can do that as well. goes without saying today that in teaching I am not teaching the truth myself by turning myself into some transparent instrument of a perennial pedagogy. I am simply addressing as best as I can a certain number of problems. Addressing them with you and with myself, and through you and myself, with a certain number of other authorities represented here. Hence, I do not intend to exclude from the exhibition or the scene either the place that I occupy here or what I would call to say in a word, say it in a word. One whose meaning I am proposing we displace a little, and hear with another ear. The autobiographical demonstration in which I would here like to take a certain pleasure and propose that you learn from me this pleasure. Considering the size of the room, it may be, though this is not yet certain, that had there been fewer of us there, might have been more pleasure to go around. But that is not certain. So-called academic freedom, the ear and autobiography, those are my objects for today. a discourse on life-death, as we were already able to verify rather amply last week, is located in a certain space, still quite indeterminate, between logos and grammar, analogy and program. That is, the different meanings of program. And since it is a question of life, this space between logic and graphics must also be situated somewhere between the biological dimension and the biographical, the thanatological, and the thanatographical. To compare writing, non-writing, written discourse, oral discourse. And we did in Köster discuss what happened before the graphemes, before the alphabet. The biographical, the aftos or autos of the autobiographical must today undergo, is today in the process of undergoing a complete re-evaluation. A philosopher's biography can no longer today be considered either as an empirical accident that leaves the philosopher's name and signature simply outside the system, that then lends itself to a simply immanent philosophical reading, and thereby makes it possible to write the lives of philosophers in the ornamental traditional style that you well know, or as psychobiographies that give an account of the genesis of the system on the basis of empirical mechanisms. Of the psychologizing type. even when inflected by psychoanalysis, of the historizing sociologizing type, etc. in parentheses. A new problematic of the biographical in general. And of the biography of philosophers in particular, must mobilize more than one new resource. I'm not terribly sorry. Excuse me. Neither immanentist readings of philosophical systems, whether structural or not, nor external empirical genetic readings of philosophy have ever questioned this dynamic border between the work and the life. The system and the subject of the system. The dynamic border that, inasmuch as it is neither simply active nor simply passive, neither outside nor inside, it is also not a thin, almost invisible line between the inside of philosophemes, for example, and the life of a nameable author, but something that traverses the two bodies according to laws whose complexity we are only now beginning to recognize. That is of great importance. I'll get my underliner here. How true. It is just starting now, the understanding of that the inside and outside is not consistible of a thin line. And this is just beginning. I can mention in this context the understanding of Heidegger, what happened in the science of cognition, quantum mechanics. Inside and outside is much more complex, fractal. use a term from Terry Mock's style of involving each other. There are an extreme amount of interesting things coming up right now as we speak. What we call life, the thing or object of biology and biography, has not only the complication of not being simply opposed to, as to a contrary, something that would be for it an opposable object, namely death. The thanatological or thanatographical or against the biological or biographical. It is also, as we have begun to verify, what has troubled Agumal, what has troubled becoming the object of a science, and for essential reasons, the object of a science in the sense that philosophy and traditional science have always given to this word, that is, with the legal status of scientificity. And this trouble that it has along with the lagging behind that ensues, it's a lagging behind entering here, as we talked about last week, stems in particular not only from the fact that a philosophy of life always has its place, a place prepared in advance, in a science of life. And the parenthesis is important here. I will read it. Something that is not the case for the other sciences. In other words, for all the sciences that are sciences of non-life, here we're coming back to the essence of life. In other words, that are sciences in some sense of the dead, which would amount to say that all the sciences that achieve this scientificity without having something behind or without lagging behind are sciences of the dead, and that there is between the dead and the status of the scientific object between death and scientific objectivity, a co-implication that interests us, that interests the desire of the scientist. Very well put. It's some interest here. Well, I would say quite a lot. And still, you can see in the other lectures doing rethinking the inner by Paul Johnston. And he goes into first person perspective and third person perspective and how they get intermingled. Third person perspective is what we think of others. First person perspective is our immediate knowledge of our intentions, feelings, perceptions, dispositions, and so forth. Mixing those is what is pointed out here. Not only then, I was saying, because a philosophy of life always has its place prepared in advance in the science of life, whose scientificity is thus limits, it thus limits accordingly, but and as a result, the trouble stems from the fact that the so-called living subject of biological discourse is always implicated in its own field, always either having a stake or being itself at stake. With its desire, its enormous, and that is enormous, my point, philosophically, ideological, and political gains. With its desire, its enormous philosophical, with all the forces from at work in it, in a word, with everything that has its potential increased in the subjectivity and signature, listen up, signature of the biologist. And of a community of biologists that constitutes the irreducible inscription of the biographical in the biological. What he mentions here is the inscription of the DNA, the inscription of the alphabet, the transferal, the copying, and how the biographical becomes the phonemes or the semiotic signs, the semiotics, will turn into biology in DNA, for instance. That is important to have in the background of this understanding. Now, the name of Nietzsche is today for us in the West the name of the one who was the only one, a lot of ones here, along with Kierkegaard, perhaps though in another way, to treat, I would say, philosophy and life, the science of life and the philosophy of life with his name, in his name, by putting his name on the line. His names, his biography, with almost all the risks that this entails. For him, his life, his name, and the future of his name, especially the political future of what he signed. The sign is important here. It seals the argument, so to speak. One must take this into account when one reads him, and one reads him only by taking this into account. That's why it's so important, this signature in biology as well. Putting one's name on the line with everything that this involves, and that cannot be reduced to an I, me as the signature maker, becomes more. Staging one's signature, turning everything one has said or written about life and death into an enormous biographical paraph. That is what he did, and that is what we need to take note of, not in order to grant him some benefit. First of all, because he's dead. And being dead means at the very least that no benefit or harm, whether calculated or not, can any longer return to the bearer of the name, such that the name, insofar as it is not the bearer, is always a name of the dead. And what returns to the name never returns to something living. Nothing returns to something living. And then we will not grant him any benefit from this, because what he bequeathed in his name as a legacy was like any legs, a poison milk that got mixed up in advance, as well as we will be reminded today with the worst of our times, and got mixed up not by chance. One must therefore read Nietzsche, and I recall this before turning any one of his texts, neither as a philosopher of being, of life, or of death, nor as a scientist or a biologist, so long as these three types have in common an abstraction from the biographical and the pretense not to be engaging their life and their names in their writings. One must thus read Nietzsche only on the basis of a gesture like that found in Ecce Homo, where Nietzsche puts forward his name and his body, even if what he puts forward has the form of a mask or of pseudonyms without any proper name. And every theory of the mask only by always granting the benefit of some protection wherein the ruse of life can be seen at work. Here life comes back. And I like the term ruse of life. One must read him starting from the moment when he says, Ecce Homo. Wie man wird, was man ist. How one becomes what one is. That is also a great saying. I modulated that before. I put two S's in ist. You become what you eat. I also like that variety. It is same sounding, homological. There are homophones. Ist and ist in German. And starting from the preface to Ecce Homo, which can be said to be coextensive with Nietzsche's entire oeuvre, such that this entire oeuvre is also the preface to Ecce Homo, and is repeated in what is called, in the strict sense, the preface to Ecce Homo. Let me recall the first lines. seeing that before long I must confront humanity with the most difficult demand ever made of it. It seems indispensable to me to say who I am. One should really know this, for I have always given proof of my identity. But the disproportion between the greatness of my task and the smallness of my contemporaries has found expression in the fact that one has neither heard nor even seen me. I live on my own credit. It is perhaps a mere prejudice that I live. Why, indeed. I'm going to now look to some of the sites. It's rather tough start of session 2. My first one here is on the second page, 26 down further. Last sentence. Well, I read it from a new already. This is even a bit earlier. A new problematic of the biographical in general and of the biography of philosophers in particular must mobilize more than one new resource, including at the very last, a new problematic of the proper name and the signature of the philosopher or biologist. Neither immanentist readings are the philosophical systems, whether structural or not, nor empirical genetic readings of philosophy have ever, as such, questioned the dynamic border between the work, now it comes, and the life, the system and the subject of the system. This is what we discussed the whole time. It's like in a nutshell. The dynamic border that, inasmuch as it is neither simply active nor simply passive, we are not theorems sitting in the theater, neither we are always active, verbal, engaged. And even as important, the next, neither outside nor inside. And listen now, it is also not a thin, almost invisible line between the inside of philosophemes, or words or concepts. For example, the life of a nameable author, but something that traverses the two bodies, the body of work and the body itself, according to laws whose complexity we are only now beginning to recognize. is what we've been weighing. We've been talking about the rigidness of the copying of the DNA or the copying of the text as in Custer, and how Bernard, and I would say Custer also, brings in the flexibility to make it work, the contingency of memory. My interpretation, as Custer said so far, or my understanding, my knowing, as Bernard would have it. This is inside and outside, and there is no thin line in between. However tempting that viewpoint would be, they are truly intermingled, but can also be absolutely distinct. This logical hard thing to get. A bit further down on the page, you're talking about the lagging behind, and I think that will be clearer once we continue with the session. And I'll just go directly in. Or without lagging behind are sciences of the dead, that there is between the dead and the status of the scientific object, between death and scientific objectivity, a co-implication that interests us, that interests the desire of the scientist. That lagging is important. It is the directedness that is the very desire. As we see further down, the trouble as well as the irreducible lagging behind. You make something dead, you stop the activity. This is what Francois Jacob did, made the living life into the object life. Or as Custer made the living text that continuously changes into a dead text. Literally the Dead Sea Scrolls, making a pun here, but you get my drift, is this deadness that makes for a irreducible lag that is unreal. I look at it and it takes time for me to have the perception. Do bear me with this. Be clear. Page 28. Very down. And this is more evocative because it's Nietzsche. Just listen to it. Don't make too much analysis of it. Only by always granting the benefit of some protection wherein the ruse of life can be seen at work, is pointing to this lividness which is not dead or objectified or forehanded. Wie man wird, was man ist, how one becomes what one is, you can turn that upside down. So what you want of yourself is already what you are. I am my projections, what I want to be as a Hans Johansson or Kalle Lundahl. That is already me. But it's in between these two where the forces, the tension, the tonality that is not detoned, if you remember. It's a taut string between two poles. Who I am, what I want to be, the same and also different. Yes, it's a bit tough. He really starts hard on Derrida here, but it will be easy. I already peeked through the coming pages. Maybe some comments from my dear colleague, Kalle here.
Let me. This time, we will read a footnote. Let me first take up.
I think you should go closer to the microphone again, or direct your voice to the microphone.
Let me take.
Better.
Let me see. So let me share with you the same text once again. And the footnote here. The footnote here on page 25. I will read the first phrase in the footnote on page 25. Several words are written by Derrida on the folder in which this session was kept, life/death Freud, manuscript fragment, to speculate life-death. And I liked these 4 words, to speculate life-death. Why so? Let me share. Are you able to see this page to speculate?
Yes.
Let me see speculation. Let me see. Able to see. So it's something about observe.
Speculari.
Yes, it should also be related to the word mirror. I don't see it right now, but it's speculum. It's the mirror. So my point is that you could say life, death. It's perhaps a pun to speculate, but it also refers to mirror, life, death. They mirror each other. So when you look into the mirror, you see both life and death, like Giovanni does. But we shouldn't see them as oppositions, they go into each other. That's my first point. Do you want to comment on that?
Very interesting. I do agree. To speculare, specere. Yes, it does make sense.
And okay, let me jump to next point.
Please try to direct your voice to the microphone spot.
Let me go down here. It was in this complicated. I have to understand. I didn't really get the point here. You had here this phrase with lagging somewhere, lagging here. And this was a complicated phrase. Let me perhaps read this and let me see if I understand it better this time. And this trouble that it has, along with the lagging behind that ensues, seems in particular not only from the fact that a philosophy of life always has its place, a place prepared in advance in the science of life, something that is not the case for other sciences. In other words, for all the sciences that are sciences of non-life, in other words, that are sciences, in some sense, of the dead, which would amount to saying that all the sciences that achieve this scientificity will leave something behind, or will lagging behind are sciences of the dead, that there is between the dead and the status of the scientific object, between death and scientific objectivity, a co-implication that interests us, that interests the desire of the scientist. Let me try to paraphrase it. I don't really understand his points. So Derrida says that there is a philosophy of life, And there is also something called science of death. But what is this science of death? Do you understand what he means, Hans?
Science of death, you can compare that to the mechanical sciences, where it's assumed that the object of knowledge is static, non-changing, distant from you. The distance you can see also as a lag, and he's playing on that.
Yes, okay.
Think about the scientist putting something in his glass shell. It takes time to isolate it. Then you see it, and that is the interest of the scientist.
Yes. So when you see something in the distance, you have this cold eyes, so to say, this objective time, but the object is at the distance. Therefore, the understanding is lagging because it takes time.
It takes time, yes.
So to say, to add, in this case, it's in a negative sense because you're looking from it from far away, so to say.
Yeah, I think that's a very good start. It is a tough thing, this one. He really starts on heavy, Derrida. It gets easier further in the text. I picked it. So it starts at the very top and then it goes down in complication.
To simplify this, so we could say that this lagging that he uses here is a synonym for the Heideggerian vorhanden, that is things that you from far away.
It definitely has parallels, I would say.
Okay. Then
I wouldn't say synonym. They are good friends, not false
good
friends.
Absolutely.
Not false friends, good friends.
Yes, absolutely. And then let me go one last thing that I wanted to mention. You made a great point about this the homonyms in German between ist and east, that is eating and being. For those who cannot German, east. And because yesterday, when we discussed the paper Custer, we had a similar issue. I could actually pick it up. Give me only 1 minute. Let me see. Give me 1 minute here. Set screen. And let me see. This is the that we went yesterday. Again, to go through yesterday. Let me see. Sigma. Yes. So it was about this Caesar's Alles, or Al, excuse me, who commented on the Book of Revelation. This Caesarius, he pointed out that in Greek the number 616 was signified by the letters Chi stigma, which he took as a monogram of Christ's name. He apparently mistook the final stigma is for a final sigma, which gave the impression that the three letters correspond to the first, middle, and the last letters in Christos. Koster he makes a clear borderline between these two S sounds.
Yes.
Sigma, stigma, while as this is an excellent parallel, I think, to the homonym you put out in Nietzsche, that you created ad hoc. What you eat, you are also that person.
Yeah.
It's excellent parallel to this. It's ridiculous to say that they make clear borderlines between two different sounds or letters.
Yes.
If you get my point.
In German, you have S and SZ. It corresponds nicely to stigma and sigma. And in this context, SZ is, I think, almost, there are some exceptions, but towards the end of a syllable. It could be another consonant. And in this particular, it's absolutely anonymous. You cannot hear any difference. But there are two different graphemes. SZ looks like a B and the regular S.
Absolutely. So that was my comment. Do you want to add something? And Hans?
Let me just add for the listeners and viewers, this was a tough start. You really went full force in Derrida. It's going to be easier. I've been seeping through the pages, peeking through them. It will open up and it gets pretty nice. So don't get over stressful because of this complicity that is in the beginning. He really go full force, but it's very interesting at the same time. So do bear with me. I will now thank you all and stop the recording. Kalle, you might linger on afterwards. And I would say thank you very much. And I hereby stop the recording for 1598.